So good morning. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. A little slow at the moment. Probably a good thing. Margaret will pick it up in a minute. Yep.
I'm behind you, man. I'm slow.
Thank you, Margaret. We've touched a lot of places here so far. A lot of interesting spaces to reflect on. For me personally, to hear and feel. I feel very full and kind of emotionally touched and exhausted. So interesting to be in the company of awake and awakening people, and to talk authentically and honestly, and how quickly that seems to happen when there's support for it from not just me, but each of the people that come, each of us. It's very inspiring to see how good people can come together and create something higher. I keep aside the idea of hope, but I'm touched, and I thank you for being so touching, so available, so open. Some of you very, very vulnerable. I don't know how you feel inside, but I would think it's very tender. And today, on day 5 of this experience, World Dharma, mindful intelligence, meditation, beautification of the mind experience. Just a few things for the few people here for the first time, and then a little bit of an opening talk, and I'd like to re-invite that place in you and me as of yesterday, a very good example of openness and shared dialogue. We get to really learn from each other. So if there are things, even things that have been said, aspects, there's no repetition in the human heart when it comes to learning about the heart. It's an area requiring so much courage and patience to keep feeling into these invisible textures. So by way of saying, if you have questions or things you want to bring to the space, you have every support for that. Reminding each of us why we're here, to fulfill the vocation of your desire, your vision for yourself. To really be here on the terms of not just your integrity, but your exploration of the things that not just are moving you, but really deeply matter. So this morning especially, just highlight that curiosity of what has been touched, what is still moving through and in me, what really matters to me. Of the 3 or 4 concerns or issues or people, struggles, joys, ambitions, creations, visions, what would be the topmost concern? And then couple it with 2 others that perhaps are interrelated to it. Historical references that you want to further explore, to understand more intimately. Cool. Present time circumstances that may be interesting to you. Or future visions that you are just now feeling and wanting to co-create within your heart and people. tomorrow's dream made real today, step by step, that kind of thing. It's a very wonderful thing to have vision. Everything that we experience in life had its origins in some vision outside of nature, which seems to be evolving and co-creating in its world. But what do you dream of? So there are a lot of different topics I would like to talk about, but I don't know that to be that interesting to you. Very fond of some of the key concepts of propaganda. I've just seen radically interesting people be co-opted by powers that be that don't even know and do things against their own best interest and actually teach it. They participate like foot soldiers willingly in the industry of a lie that creates slavery rather than liberation. It's so remarkable to me. In the name of, you can pretty much justify anything. I keep going on and on about this, the safeguarding of liberty. When people ask about the soul essence of world Dharma, or being a yogi for me, or the essence of spiritual intelligence or mindful intelligence, Dhamma, Dharma, those words are very important to me. It's the vocation of liberating consciousness from greed, anger, and delusion, and elevating generosity, loving kindness, compassion, with the radiance of wisdom and freedom. That doesn't belong anywhere, doesn't belong to anyone. It's not found in Catholicism alone, or Buddhism alone, or whatever the definition of God and Dharma mean. It's, to me, that's the deep, organic, existential act that we're dealing with. Is what does it mean to be intelligent with consciousness, psyche, and source in context? So I spend a lot of time inside of my own mind trying to find the language that distills timeless principles of awakening from their encasements. I'm very fond of taking it out of systems and putting it more comfortably into the organic system of the inner and outer ecosystem that we're inseparably embedded in, and find language that talks about it as nature rather than the church or philosophy or the system. So yesterday you were invited to write down the constellation of words and phrases that you use to define your psychological, spiritual mind and life. There you have your Pope, your church. We have the choice either to inhabit those things meditatively as energies and never-ending evolution of intelligences, bring verb energy to them rather than solidity and noun energy to them. So in a way, the intelligence, if there was a kind of creative place within mindful intelligence, it's good morning. It's like, I don't know if it can be said this way, the authenticating of authenticity. And because you don't want to escape, Alan, from authenticity, which means a high regard for the naturalness of being human, without being so lax that you fall into the collective ordinary and keep justifying ordinary as evolutional wisdom. So right there is a very fine balance to keep alive Samvega, a heightened urgency, a wakefulness, an immediacy. You found your lover, your twin flame, and all of a sudden you have the choice. You're in Samvega. It's not just heightened urgency like a fire, but twin flame includes this magnetism to higher order frequency. I would encourage people, all of you, and encourage me to evolve this organic magnetism so that we define our lives more by the process of freedom than the outcome of comfort. Lots of people impose upon their psychological life and spiritual life, meditative life, happiness, peace, and comfort. Quite frankly, I've seen remarkable experiences in that area, but equally disappointed on the shore of denial that the next wave that came in kind of knocked me for a loop, and all of a sudden my peace and stability and comfort and trust and all the things that came with happiness were just knocked over completely, and I had to pick up and go back into the ocean and try to find the next wave of clarity to reassemble my understanding of myself. So process is more important than outcome, that's all. And to bring into these words of our psychological Dharma life, process. Reinvent those words to mean something as an energy, as a feeling. So, I could talk about the history of mindful intelligence sometime today. People have asked yesterday the meaning of world Dharma. I'd like to explain that more. You've heard me speak about the era, for me personally, of transism, trans church, certainly trans guru, trans authority, trans teacher. I would even say trans tradition in that, trans lineage. I mean, we're in the era of liberating freedom from form. It's very important to me. As I've said, you could easily find remarkable movement in wind. If you're a kite surfer, you can't live without it. Movement. You unknowingly want to remember that wind when you're at home in your box-shaped house called your idea of self, and you have an image of the wind that you've created. It's an incredible piece of movement, but somehow you forget the wind and now you worship the ornament. I don't know, I've seen so many Buddha statues anywhere. And if those of you who come to Burma, you'll see millions of them, entire regions of them, all with Roman influence, and none of them dating back to the time of the Buddha. Imagine 2,500 years from now we have 45 million images of Margaret.
Oh, good Lord.
The trans Tantra goddess. It's possible. Imagine little old Lord Buddha coming over here and saying, listen guys, I was just an ordinary guy. I was polyamorous, just trying to get on with my life. Next thing you know, they worshiped me. A little bit Monty Python-like. Yeah? It could work out that way. It could have been that Jeff Bezos got a hold of the Buddha and decided to monetize it. So commodification is a very big thing here. And how to decouple our lives and psyche from that commodification process. We want to authenticate our Dharma, authenticate our yoga. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, to find words that take it out of forms, traditions and lineages, and distill what is the meaning of that word. What are you doing when you meditate? What's the common universal qualities to it? Obviously, oxygen doesn't belong to any religion or language. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the blueprint of free and conscience-based society, doesn't belong to anyone. Freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of creativity, freedom of transformational awakening. Are you willing to be in the human right to have a non-denominational transformational wisdom? Find language for that. And couple it to the second point before we move on, is keeping quite active in the heart the immediacy of transformation, presence, intimacy, love, kindness, the beautification of the mind. The flower opens proportionate to the nutrients. We breathe oxygen, simultaneous to living and thinking, breathe our Dharma simultaneous to living and thinking. Be in transformational experience equal to breathing. When we're talking to someone, looking at someone, make them your God, your goddess, your transformational moment. Be in the most authentic space possible with no time off. So there's 10 qualities I'd like to share with you, and then bring it right back to each of us here to talk about issues, concerns that are important for us. This is again, these 10 qualities are known as paramis, P-A-R-A-M-I-S, paramis. It's a very obscure word in the Pali language. And they are considered qualities of excellence. When you come to Burma, you'll occasionally hear someone say, Parami Thekambade Kimya. And it means that I see in your being, in your radiance, that you're committed to 10 qualities of consciousness that illuminate freedom. Their function is to illuminate freedom. And they are the most nurturing qualities of consciousness to open the mind to the beautiful qualities that you have defined as your reason to be. Freedom being one of them, perhaps generosity, compassion, love. All things good, they say, originate in the evolution of these paramis. If you know these paramis as the basis of being, B-O-B, basis of being, use acronyms to remind you of conscious reflections to help support present time, presence actualization. Stop saying present time, presence. We're in an actualization experience together. The time for hope is over. We're in an era of actualization. That's putting hope into action. You get that, right? We want to be in actualization in our lives. Actualization. These paramis are rarely ever discussed by guides and teachers in the traditions that I come from because they're considered so rare for individuals to grok or get or feel into or define their lives by. They'd rather keep to dana and sila, generosity and ethical intelligence. But in the final 9 nights that I had with my late teacher, Venerable Seda U Pandita, who died at 95, one of the foremost minds in Myanmar, in mindful intelligence and practice, he shared with me the paramis. I had known about them to some extent, but he talked to me about them. I'd like to pass them on to you so that you can take them, if you so choose, for your lifetime as the definition of being, put into action to actualize your beauty. The definitions of being, the mosaics of the soul, the qualities of consciousness responsible for transformational presence, accountability, impact assessment, trans-hypocrisy. I'd like to encourage you, just that word alone. How am I in trans-hypocritical consciousness? We want to safeguard ourselves from predation, manipulation, coercion, extortion, and believing our own lies. So hypocrisy, denial, deception are the safeguards of decency and trust. These 10 qualities I'll just say them moderately, quickly, and then I'll go over them with you. Yeah, you can write them down, of course. Generosity, I had a teacher who spoke his whole life about mindful intelligence. I never heard him give the same talk twice. 45 years. And I wrote them down verbatim when I was with him. I have notebooks after notebooks of them. If you're interested in books that he's written or his talks that have been transcribed and put into books, A Beautiful State of Mind is one. I just want to validate that what I'm saying to you isn't original, so that it doesn't look as if something that I'm saying should be followed. I'm just sharing with you things that I've learned from people I respect. I've enhanced them to my own personal taste, and I encourage you to do the same. Another book that he is responsible for is the In This Very Lifetime. That's the title. If you're in Burma, you can get them quite easily there. So if you don't need to do them. But generosity, integrity, second one. The third is renunciation. And wisdom. Now, each of these have very specific definitions and meanings and characteristics and trainings and practices, but we'll get into them a little bit, but I want to share them quickly here. The fifth is energy. Energy. This is like the holy grail of existential Buddhist psychology. Patience. They have such different meaning in the Pali language, although I'm not in any way conversant in that language. I'm just like a second grader. But it's quite fascinating to look at the nuances of meaning that are very different than the English or whatever your native language is. The sixth is, truthfulness.
Seven? Is that truthfulness? Truthfulness is seven?
Yes. Excuse me. Truthfulness is seventh.
What's six?
Six is patience.
Energy, wisdom, renunciation.
I mean, just think what we could do with truthfulness. Just that state of mind alone. That when I hear the word, I feel there's a part of me that just stays very like at peace, knowing that I'm very dedicated to the constancy of a truthful presence. It's another way of bringing integrity into the concept of authenticity, truthfulness. Truthfulness is, in some ways, is a more elegant authenticity. I'd rather have someone be truthful than authentic, in a relationship especially. Oh, hi, I'm really authentic. Wow, how sexy is that? You know? Oh, I'm really non-truthful and authentic. Wow, let's get married. That's really cool. Where did you go to school, Akasha? Which country are you from? India? What's your name? I won't dare say it. All names in India mean me. I am God incarnate. You need a yoni massage? That's such a cheap joke, isn't it? Who's had a yoni massage here? What in the fuck possesses you to do that? I know I'm just joking. Now listen, I've had mind massages, body massages. But is there such thing as a penis massage? Of course. Isn't that like a hand job?
Kind of, but better. Yeah.
The massage, they call them penis massage, a lingam massage. Josh, have you had one?
I've not had one, but they exist apparently.
A happy ending, isn't it?
A happy ending.
The idea is that it's not actually sexual intellectual behind it, right? Like it's supposed to just be like
What's the point?
a reverence thing.
What's the fucking point? Do my hand instead of my fucking dick. I have more sensation in my fingers. Anyway, just got deviated there.
Well, Alan, you're in the right place.
I know, I can
You
hear
need to
that. I can hear
experiment.
that. Okay. No experimentation in that area. Thank you. Determination. The whole thing, the whole idea is so creepy. I mean, it's right down there with a low-end pat pong Thai massage. In the name of.
So Liam massage
Anyway, I'm
and
just.
yoni massage liberate freedom.
Thank you, Colleen. I knew you'd speak up. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you offer them?
I do not.
Thank you. So you've had one then.
Yes. And I give them to my lovers, but I do not offer
There you go. That's a different thing, Melly, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a very different thing.
Yeah, and I would
We all do it with our lovers. We all do all kinds of things with our lovers. We have to formalize it as like a penis massage. God, how sexy is that?
Well, and the difference is like traditionally, it's very specific relationships that would do that. You don't have a business like offering
Exactly.
massages
The
of
problem
this sort.
isn't
Like
here.
you have like
Why is this getting so much discussion? I brought it up, right? Okay. Back to parami rather than prick. So after truthfulness comes determination. And the ninth one is, most everyone's heard the word metta, loving kindness. And the 10th is equanimity. There's so many different synonyms for each of these words. Anyone need to hear any of those again, or you have all 10? Yeah? The last is equanimity, or balance of mind. It's a balance of factors. You very rarely hear in classical settings where they share mindful intelligence teachings references to consciousness or mind. They're more specific with textures, frequencies, composites, constellations. They see consciousness as continuum and in interrelated continuums of components. Speaking about it more in the rainbow effect, that a rainbow isn't a thing, it's a spectrum. And so I would tend to get more and more specific with language and have that skill that you bring more and more to our lives, the meditation filter, which is the employment of an energetic or an intelligent discernment that feels, knows, evolves. And to take those words into in-breath, out-breath. Like last night in conversation, there was maybe 7, 9, 10 people. At times I tried to look at people and communicate very directly. I tried to stay as attentive as I could to my emotions and my body. Tried to feel the other person. And equally to that, I tried to expand it sometimes to someone who was sitting next to someone, and then to the entire context, and just tried to be more playfully curious on how to evolve this transparent, mindful awareness and discern what was I feeling versus what was I hearing, and what could I bring to that which I was hearing, and what should I ask versus what should I say, and trusting that intuitive interplay to feel. What do I feel? And I noticed sometimes, a few people I spoke to, Heidi and Jennifer and Nina and Duncan, Shiva's here. Sorry I didn't get a chance to speak to you. I've been wanting to speak to you. You're such a handsome man. You really are. You're amazingly handsome. You're unbelievably gracious. And I really thank you for your kindness. Just want to tell you that. Thank you. Just trying to feel like, okay, I hear you. But I wanted to do my Margaret routine with like Nina last night. I wanted to tell her I love her, you know, that you're really such a special woman. Same with Heidi, you know. Heidi's birthday yesterday. Look at that. 38. Happy birthday. So courageous. I was thinking about you last night. You're so amazingly courageous and artistic, that you hold it together the way you do, that you not only hold it together, but your boys are magnificent. So thank you for coming into my life and offering your heart. Jennifer's a new friend, amazing, smart, disciplined, creative, edgy. You're edgy like me. Very, probably edgier than me if I really got to know you more. So thank you for your goodness. Say no more about Margaret. Get over that Tantra story. Just drop it. You're so much better than Tantra.
It's been a while since I've had Tantra, man. I mean, seriously.
Okay, thank you. Leave it at that. Put it in the past.
I think I'm over it, you know.
Put it in the past. Two more things we're going to open it up to you. Two very obscure things about parami. Know those qualities, define them, know their characteristics, what they feel like, how they're evolved, how you compromise them, their shadows, those qualities of mind that masquerade as them. But put them under intimate felt study for our whole lives. They are the result of what we want in life. To evolve them, to cultivate them, is the actualization, in the traditional sense, of excellence. Excellence of consciousness. They call it the individual dedicated to being upright. A person who's rooted in trust and safety in Myanmar would be someone who has a relationship to those 10 paramis. Take it out of the word trust, take it out of the word integrity. I'd like to know, when you meet someone, do you know these 10 paramis? Nope. Well, no sex until you study them. I don't want to go down anywhere except when you have parami as a trust factor, then I know that you're reliable. So in order to be able to say that satirically, we want to become reliable. I heard that over and over and over again as a monk. Alan, you want to become reliable. There's something very nice about that. My mom was reliable. I try to be reliable with my daughter, although I'm sure she has a different opinion sometimes. With my friends, more and more, it's not enough to show up, but to be more reliable, consistent, evolutional, supportive, caring, dimensional. So, two more qualities and we'll open it up. What drives these 10 qualities is what they call Dharma conviction. That there's a thing called cetana, or intention, a deep intentionality of being. You know how you meet people that are sort of semi-awake, others who are not awake at all, but they're really on fire with wanting to know more? Then there are those who have a lot of words and language who are sort of like without fire. It's like not really natural, but it's slightly too fluent, almost contrived. And then you meet someone who's just really wants to know, and you can't get enough of her time or his time, and they're radically curious. They don't need to really talk a lot. They want to know what you know. That's a very rare quality. That's Dhamma cetana, Dhamma conviction. I want to know. I want to satiate this deep appetite for intelligence and liberty. And the two qualities that drive this vocation often are compassion for self and compassion for others. It comes back to the first noble truth that inherently difficulty is in suffering. We're suffering. A lot of us are in pain, conflict. We're in a world that's collapsing. I want to understand resilience and compassion. So this is why classically these paramis are expressed as the epic archetypal woman, because people associate in modern times the woman, the mother, as being someone who's willing to do anything for her child. Are you willing to do anything for your paramis? I'm absolutely committed to you means I'm absolutely committed to the paramis in me and your conviction in the paramis in you. So when we talk about trust and safety and integrity and conscience, this is the last area that I'd like to share with you, is have those rooted in your 10 paramis. My last point. Those are 10 classics. Alongside of them, use synonyms should you choose that speak to you. Words have to speak to heightening the vocation of transformational wisdom. Words in other systems sometimes are left as words, but personalize them. Like, you know when you're reading a text from your lover, your husband, your wife, or someone you really care about, and you're not really sure, but you're reading a lot into the text. People do that? That's sort of natural, right? I'm not just alone reading my own text. No? No matter what those emoticons say and don't say, those fucking words mean everything, right? Make those words mean everything in terms of your 10 paramis. So my last point here is personalize that list to what are the 10 qualities that you want known to the world and your family and your lovers and friends at your own death. This is what defined me. I would play really intimate, high-valued presence with your heart. Be intelligent. And so compassion is the driving force a lot of the time. And compassion isn't just blind to unendingly support people in continuing to be denigrating to you. That's a whole different concept. So be very measured and intelligent in how you understand the word compassion. Generally it means the ability to resonate, co-quiver, if you will, with another person's conflict, suffering. Co-quiver. Wisdom, the parami, the fourth parami, informs compassion on the course of action. So we hear compassion, I want to be compassionate, but these 10 paramis play in together to enlighten, if you will, or create a greater intelligence to each of the other qualities in the spectrum. So compassion without wisdom is quite blind. It could even be shadowed by collusion. So you can see the dimensions here of how these things play. And so I'm really inviting you, study states of consciousness. If you're a yogi or you're teaching yoga, teaching meditation, be clear that you're sharing your experience of states of consciousness and how you go about informing other states of states. That's called practice. That's all you're doing. You're evolving states with states through this so-called technique. What are the states inherent in your technique? Don't talk to me about technique, talk to me about states. So be very careful with that. And the last one is very rarely talked about, which I think all of us can appreciate, that we're adventurers. This is where it becomes very interesting to take the construction worker, no offense to the construction worker, although if you notice on the way down, just on the side, this new villa that's being built, just up on the other side of the parking lot, have you seen that? Take a look over there, who's doing all the heavy lifting? The women. And adventure, to me, is the driving force of my life right now, more than compassion. I care about all these qualities, but I am living like I've never lived. And my mom and my dad, both of whom passed away, as I've said numerous times, lived until the old ages of 96. They lived way out loud. I have a family of out loud energy. I'm encouraging adventure to mean what you want it to mean. Heidi's doing what she can. Jennifer seems to be coming. Nina's on the fence. Susan's thinking about coming to Burma. Others, Kylie, you're coming. You're coming. Martin's thinking about it. Maybe some others are thinking about it. Please take your time. You're coming. Maybe you're coming. Be, Colleen's coming. Be unrelenting in your courage to find creative angles to fulfill the vision of your heart. This is where that strident and courageous and determined, I'm not that smart really, but I'm very, you don't want me in your pocket. I'll take your fucking leg off. I'm a fighter. I'm determined. A scrapper. I've worked hard to do what I did. I worked at 11 years old in a gas station to make my own money. I had to be independent. I was told, this is your time. Good or bad, it's something in my blood. As a meditator, those of you who experiment for 9 days, 10 days in Burma, you will be encouraged. You have to be more ardent. If you're going to be a slacker, don't come. This is a time to see what you're made of. Be courageous. Step it up. You can always end any time and leave, but the retreat ends in 9 days. Okay, I'm up at 4. I'm doing yoga now 2 hours, 3 hours before I normally do it. And I've got this gifted meal being given to me freely by people who worked hard in fields to cook it and bring it to you. You get to really live in grace. It takes all of that personal sleepiness right out of your fucking shallow soul. And you go like, wow, I'm enlivened by receiving the gift to awaken parami. People are feeding you so that you can be in an environment to see these different states of consciousness. Adventure. And I would really leave it at that. Like, what are you doing in your lives to impose hardship, struggle, complexity, God forbid confinement? Where is that place in you? How many people I see that live in urban settings that are on antidepressants, that are doing things particularly that are very contrary to their own beauty, but they live in settings and do things and jobs, they don't really examine their context. I think many people have come to Bali to realize that there's an alternative way to live. It may not be as easy sometimes, but sometimes adventure is just being willing to take an R-I-S-K, a risk. And I'd like to leave that with you. What are the risks that you would like to anoint into your life on your notebook? What are some of the risks that you'd like to bring that kind of inner smile to you that goes like, you know, I'm going to fucking just diss my social media account. I'm off of Tinder. I'm off of all dating apps. I'm just going to start saying hello wherever I go. Hi, how are you? Would you like to fucking have coffee? I'm already having coffee. Would you like to sit with me? Want to get married? Yep, done. Fuck Tinder, right? Just do it differently, another way of taking risks. So I'll leave it with you at that. And if there are things that you want to discuss now, questions, areas, don't hesitate to use the washroom, keep your notebooks active. Take a couple of minutes and think, what is it that I want to use? Is only today, the afternoon, tomorrow, and tomorrow afternoon is the final opportunity to share, to talk. So check in with your heart. Why am I here? What do I want to talk about? And I'm happy to share with you whatever it is that's important. Susan?
Could you just speak to energy really quickly?
Energy, yes, energy. Speak to energy very quickly. It's the propulsion of the consciousness, this impulse to want to make real on the paramis. It's the force that lifts the hand towards the fork, knowing that that morsel of food is the nutrients needed to animate body and mind in order to live and to speak and to love. It makes an effort, a conscious effort, to have bought the right food, to eat the right food, to consecrate the food. You're making right energetic, deep impulses to take your hand to that which opens the flower. It's one thing to have in mind thoughts of love, but it takes the effort to actualize that love. And love isn't just a feeling in consciousness. Compassion, obviously, isn't just a thought in the mind. Generosity does not feed people. The energy to deliver on the promise of dana takes you right to the other person's home. Knock, knock, knock. I'd like to offer you the gift of this diamond called hello. So many people get inverted with parami, dharma, yogi, meditation, and think it's a employment primarily of consciousness within consciousness. And yes, it takes effort to bring one's mindfulness and one's intelligence to even something as simple as your own body. I mean, you hear the word embodied presence, it takes the right effort, the parami of effort to mindfully be aware of the embodiment of being. Without the effort to be mindful, you won't particularly be mindful, until the effort is so strengthened that it happens more naturally. So effort is there to co-join with any beautiful state to actualize its existence, rather than randomly waiting for it to arrive, being triggered or ignited from the outside and then feeling it. Effort, right effort here, parami-driven effort, consciously takes the hand to the brush, to the chosen color, to the canvas of shared space, and there you drew the design of your creative expression of parami. So strengthen effort. When the mind wanders in meditation, notice where it went, a thought, an image, a sound, and you are disciplining the mind to come back to the primary object because you're making the right effort to refine states of consciousness. I think that's a very important point that Susan's bringing up about effort. It seems that nothing really happens without effort, and herein lies where we're developing conscious effort to consciously evolve beautiful states of mind. And so it takes an inner discipline. I go to a yoga studio when I go. It takes the effort to remember the time, to be there on time, to have washed my mat if I do that, to be proper when I sit there, to listen, to attentively listen to the teacher or the guide's instructions. I make the effort to do the asana, make the effort to do the asana of love, the asana of compassion, the asana of generosity takes effort. Try to familiarize ourselves with right effort, the parami of energy. Then the more nuanced quality at times is just simply conscious energy. Like all of these states of mind, in a way, are textured energy. Compassion is an energy textured with the feeling intelligence of wanting to resonate with another person's suffering. And in order for that compassion to be understood, one has to acquaint oneself as much as possible, at least it seems to me, I don't want to sound preachy about this, with the energy of compassion. And then the effort to actualize the compassion. Be watchful of the words energy and effort, and how we can energy and frequency and texture, vibrational intelligence, that kind of thing. Another thing is, we hear the word uniqueness a lot, the authentication of uniqueness. Where is uniqueness within the human heart and soul? I mean, uniqueness is another way of looking at creativity and originality and integrity, anti-plagiarism, anti-puppetry. So when you hear uniqueness, it's like, okay, wow, I'm going to resonate with a more original, creative, vulnerable, open uniqueness to my own voice, whatever it is in my language. Let's take risks to live more in our uniqueness. I see so many nuns and monks and Buddhist teachers, I mean, just the notion when I hear a Western Buddhist teacher, I immediately feel like I'm in the church of now mindfulness. It's like, okay, that means I've got to adhere to the ethics committee's belief of what it means to be a Western Buddhist teacher, which, okay, cool. But I don't know, maybe it's just my 7-year-old rebellion, but I'm just not comfortable with it. Uniqueness to me within that is very interesting. And so the energy of uniqueness, not many people have a relationship to that, often in language. So be watchful of that in yourself. You had a question?
So this is less of a question, more of just something that I wanted to raise. So the very last part that you said about risk, I just wanted to raise this to say, it struck me with that list how living in these pyramids, being successful in it, truly successful, so much of it comes down to one trait that I feel has been like the cornerstone of my last year, which is bravery. And I had an interesting moment yesterday when we were talking in the afternoon and I made this comment, which I felt was a bit like putting myself out there, and I said I've been celibate for a year, and I thought that was a deal, and then walked out and stood outside the bathroom, and this stream of women came up to me. I've been celibate for 4 years, I've been celibate for 3 years, I've been celibate for 7 years, I've been celibate for a year. Most of the women in this room have not had sex in a really long time. But if you looked at us, you would not know that. You would never think it. And that's such a common in Ubud. The number of women that I meet here who are not happy with the state of being, of how things are in this town. And how many of us are actually openly being brave enough to say, do you know what, I'm not okay with like polyamorous open relationships. I'm not okay with how men behave here. And to openly, honestly say that to the men in our lives, and to say that to the women around us, and to say, do you know what, like I want to have all these things. I want to be treated with integrity in my sexuality. I want to have a lover who meets me with total honesty and dignity at the highest consciousness of my being. And to be able to actually stand up there and say that, I want that, and I'm not fucking ashamed of it, and that doesn't make me like some, you know, that, like there's nothing humiliating in doing that, but it requires some bravery to stand up and say, like there's nothing wrong with me for wanting that. If we want to embody all of these behaviours, if we want to reach this highest level of integrity and truthfulness and beauty in our being, we have to be so fucking willing to stand up and say, yeah, this is who I am, and be okay with the fact that other people around us might judge us, because in doing that, we suddenly discover that actually everyone, like we're all on the same path. We could all be supporting each other in this. We could be changing things if we all stood up together and said, I stand for something different.
Thank you. I think you said it. Yeah, nothing really to add to that, but I appreciate hearing that. Touches a lot of important places for me. The courage to speak not only your truth, but to speak up regardless of the consequences. Knowing what to say when one speaks up. Set aside the consequences. When do I want to, how do I want to say it? To whom do I want to say it? And when? The skillfulness of saying what I really think and feel, regardless of the consequences. When I hear bravery, I want to safeguard the integrity of it, the dignity of it, the compassion of it. For me personally, the non-make other in it. To try to be in where it has been a shortcoming for me, where I'm in illusion with it, been hurt by my own blindness to it. So that we, for me, I'm not suggesting a thing from you, we share through what we've learned and what we don't want to repeat, rather than just simply or disproportionately infusing our truthfulness and bravery of truth to make wrong something. Although I do believe that there's a hell of a lot of things where one can speak up with an outrageous sense of injustice.
And I think sometimes it doesn't even need to be that, and that's part of the bravery, is that, like for me, having these conversations has meant standing up and saying, like, I don't want an open relationship, but do you know what, I was in one, and to be honest about that and to not be ashamed, like that's a big thing, to put aside your own sense of shame of, I've had to be quite open to say, I made these mistakes, I colluded with this whole system that I didn't want to be a part of, because perhaps I wasn't brave enough in that moment to stand up and say, I love this person, but I respect myself more.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do that. I chose the other person instead of my own dignity and my own self-respect. That's my honesty. I have to say that for me to be able to stand up and say I was a part of this. Because I can't honestly stand up and say this other person was bad to me, or these people all took advantage of me, because I chose to go there.
You
I
did.
chose to be part of it. That's part of the honesty, is you can't just point the finger at everyone else.
No. No, when you got your clothes off making love like that, you're complicit.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's no blame needed.
And not be shameful about it, to be able to also have a really, like an openness to accept what is, accept other people's part and not vilify them, also, not vilify them, not vilify myself, but to be able to just say, this is something that I want to rise above and rise beyond without judging you, without attacking you and your choices. And in that, there's so much growth, because if we can do that and say, look, if you want to be polyamorous, then you be polyamorous, and I'm not going to judge you for that. However, be aware that this behaviour has been hurtful to me, to this woman here, to this woman here, to this woman here, and let's have a discussion about it.
So you are a little bit both on a personal level feeling that it's not worked for you at this point. Equally, you feel slightly, as an activist, wanting to point out the flaws of it psychologically and philosophically. That's what it sounds like. Is that right?
But also willing to be accepting of the fact that I've been with a lot of polyamorous men who are beautiful, loving people who I'm still in, relationship and friendship with, and I respect. So it's a complex thing, and I would honestly say, I think for many of them it comes from a point of brokenness that they are like that, but I don't even want to judge that, because I've got my own layers.
No, when I hear the word sexual preference, where I go in my heart is just honesty.
Yeah.
Like, this is who I am. I'm a man, I'm not a, I'm a man. I'm going to start with the honesty of the evident. I think honesty is a bigger issue than sexual preference.
It totally is.
Yeah, that's all. And that comes back to the parami of truthfulness, and how committed am I to truthfulness, and then discernment. I'm going to enter this. I know I've been down the road once before, twice before, 3 times before. You seem to be different. What's your name? I keep getting the name wrong. All roads lead back to this guy. Something to do with an Indian name. Somewhere in the Hindu iconography, that all roads lead back to the ultimate.
Osho.
Yeah.
Osho? I don't know Osho. I refuse to talk about Osho.
Okay.
I don't. Who? Rocky? Parvati. But I'm going to do it differently with you this time. We're going to be like slightly monogamous, a little bit more poly, slightly bi, maybe a little bit trans, a little bit of celibacy, Duncan and you. We're going to throw in some mix. We're going to retreat in between. We'll do a little porn.
Yeah.
It's a new version of like Ubudian trans poly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then 10 years down the road, no offense, I'm back at the next little gifted Beautification of the Mind retreat, and I just say 10 years have went by. I've had 75,000 lovers between that time and this time. I've got.
Sounds totally accurate.
You got it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I am. My name now is Eve. I've got children all over the world, and I'm in love with God. God damn it!
Yeah.
I took over the Hindu cult.
Yeah.
I'm the ultimate yoni.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no end to the proliferation of variation. More of what I do when I was listening to you, which is my habit, is how would I be inside of what you're saying? Like you're talking to me. I'm one of your former lovers is a polyamorous person who's hurt you. And you want to make clear to me something that I don't know in myself. I personalize it, like trying to get compassion, like very personal. And I think of like where I'd want to learn from you is, please help me understand the Dharma, the Dhamma. Listen, I really respect you. Your yogi life, your Dharma life, what's your inner compass of making decisions dharmically, intelligently? You know, what's your guiding system? And help me understand how to have a higher integrity and vocation with my mindful intelligence, so that I'm willing to be more experimental, but at the same time, only I can abscond or leave my soul. No one can take my freedom unless I give it to them. That ultimate credo by political prisoners, my mind is not yours to take unless I give it to you. I want to know how you do that. That's what I'd want to know, rather than telling me my brown skin is slightly not the right color of white. My sexual preference of being a polyamorous celibate doesn't quite cut it, because you've left a lot of broken hearts along the way. You've never even touched their body. And that could be true. I mean, are you... So that's where I would go, is like, you know, be a wise man rather than an activist of pointing out faults.
Yeah.
Although there's good wisdom in that too, but...
And I think the thing is, it's kind of like when you are deeply honest with yourself, which is all you have to be, you bring the other person to a higher level, because often it can, particularly in this town, but with men in general, it can be a case of lowest common denominator, what can I fucking get away with? Like, you say to a man, I'm not prepared to have an open relationship, and it's a real deal breaker where he will either go, do you know what, I really genuinely love you, and I'm willing to commit to you because you are that important to me. To not hurt you, I will go there. And a man who you're not important enough to will go, you know what, there's another 20 like yoga instructors here that I can meet on Tuesday, so see you later. And that is part of the trouble here, is that there is so much availability of women who are willing to cross their own boundaries of what they're actually okay with. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I think if more of us were more in our own integrity of saying, actually, I'm not okay with this, and to be honest with ourselves and with the men around us, we would hold them to a higher level of consciousness. And if there are men out there who are genuinely polyamorous and are doing that with integrity and in their own way, that's their choice. I'm not going to judge them for that, but I think there's a lot of men who are by default polyamorous, basically just because they want to fuck.
See, that whole rap is something meant for like the Byron or the Ubudian Echo or something, you know,
so
write a column about it,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But it doesn't strike me as really you, to be very personal with you. It seems like an old story.
Yeah.
It's more of a rant than a wisdom. And it may be true, but go to LA, it's worse.
Yeah. It pisses me off, the carnage of women that I see. And it's
Listen, it's a global problem.
Yeah.
Look at me as a guy telling that the whole male industry of transformation should step down. It's not just like keep your fucking dick in your pants. It's like step down, Western Buddhist teachers. I'm even asking the Dalai Lama to resign. So I'm with you.
Yeah.
They're not to be trusted. I'm not to be trusted. I know that. I am basically celibate right now because I'm vulnerable. And I'm looking to reinvent something that doesn't work. It hasn't worked. But I'll tell you, woman to woman, man to man, man to woman, woman to man. Everything that's said about men, there's a woman just as bad. I know them by name. A lot of them. And so it's hard to generalize, but in the cultural tradition of what we see today in the transformational business, mostly it's a male-driven industry. It's hellacious sometimes. I won't bring up the male issue, but I've been thrown on the rocks by amazing women that you would not believe are brutal, brutal fucking capitalists, lying, fraudulent Instagram whores. Hate to use that kind of language, but I'll tell you, it's as bad in the female department as it is in the male department. They're looking for fucking money, not just yoni. Money and carnage, reliving the trauma of what men did to them, not alone, their mothers. So I'm right with you on the dialogue. I'll be willing to have it publicly or privately or somewhere else. But it's a difficult issue being human. This is where I come back to the Dhamma. I'm first and foremost a transformational creature rooted in Dhamma. When you play into the world of form and you start dealing with orifices and hearts and minds and gods, it's going to be clumsy and awkward, and get used to it, Alan. It ain't going to work out. Very rare does it work out in the way that we think that it's going to work out. But when we root in this kind of deeper mindful intelligence, there's a greater chance of harmony. I think that's where the lessons are being learned from me. And equally, you live in this town. You're making it your home. Make the nest more beautiful. I mean, I do theater. I've used the power of satire and comedy to avoid radical murder. And then the other thing on a more personal level, I can't encourage you, but it's my sense is the missing thing with my former partner was the lack of decency that I perceived in what we had done for these years to talk about what has occurred and where it's going. And I think that's the missing thing for me. It's not so much the style of sexuality or the choice to be with someone else or the deception. It's that it seemed to invalidate so much of the information, the emotions that were shared prior to that separation. And all that I was looking for, that I really look for, is the process of an evolving discussion about why it's not working, or why I deceived you, or why I'm no longer attracted to you in the way that I was, or why that I'm the why. And I think that's where a lot of the conscious uncoupling concept is sort of the forefront of coupling today. I think it should be implicit that if we want to be together in some form of relationship, that we do commit, should it go away, to a period of, say, 30 days or 60 days or 2 weeks minimum, where we're willing to really get down and hang and have anyone in our world who we respect come to us to support us in consciously transcending or moving out. I think that really satisfies the heart, because it's the hardship of not being friends and being somewhat misled and living in that shadow where I get stuck. That's what my hurt is. It's not in the separation, it's in the process of how it didn't separate in the way I thought was conscious, based upon the integrity of how we came together. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but where men and women have created faults and struggles with each other, I'd invite dialogue. In Burma, those of you who come to Burma, you'll see that they're actually encouraging in every shape and form people who have violated family, friends, and themselves to come together and to continue to talk for the betterment of the future of the people. It's a living example of the things that we're talking about. And it's the real disappointment for me is this word cowardice. And then I get very shallow when I see their lifestyle and who they're with, kind of like oblivious to any feeling of pain. It's like, how in the fuck could you not feel remorse at the level that I feel? Or any hurt? I know that we're not going to be together, but you're like, you moved right through it, dude. Or girl. You know, you're all over Instagram with your new guy and you're like fucking making out like you've been together for 10 years. It's like, where were we? I mean, that's kind of like, that's more of the piss off of like, God, did I get really like hoodwinked with a borderline personality, shallow sociopath? Possibly. So the more of the issue is not so much their sexual issue, it's the psychology. Then it goes right back to, not to get off on a rant about this, but I am not comfortable with God at all. The whole fucking thing to me is psychopathic. I can really vilify the individual, like it's really easy to demonize someone, but the real issue is the greater context, the organic totality. That story to me, it's a fucking bad design. This app would not work even as a really high-priced video game. It's too real, too sick, too torturous, too rape-oriented, too psychopathic, too murderous. Who would create a life where we had to contend with genocide? Why would we want to be one with this motherfucking thing? I can't get over the whole Hindu story of like, let's be one with the source, as if it's going to go away while all the other 4 cretins down there who are being raped and pillaged and starved to death, it's just Leela? You can get away with that kind of bullshit? This is where I get off into the existential activist rebellion story. I think we've been hoodwinked by religions, thinking that it's our fault. I think we're the chosen ones having to fucking rectify the context. That makes sense? I'm tired of doing the work. You fucking do ayahuasca. You go into therapy. You fucking be celibate. You stop being violent. I'm not violent, you are. I think all humans on earth could be nonviolent, and there would still be this propulsion that we would still see unthinkable expressions of violence, probably in nature, in animals. You might translate it as something natural, but I'll tell you, you know, I've seen it as a monk. I lived in virgin jungles for a year, just trying to get off the grid without electricity, without water, no shoes, nothing, no talking, no cooking, no food, all brought to us daily. And I lived in this jungle for a year. Maybe you've done that just to do my Thoreau, just to see what it was like to be in deep, deep, unremitting nature. And it was horror for me. It was worse than a bad acid trip to see what life did to life. I could not translate it as natural. I did not want to be a part of that. I mean, I don't know if it interests you, but we had hundreds of really large lizards on the island, between 60 and 200 pounds in Lanka. And these fuckers were so aggro. They weren't like charming, let's take a little video of these fuckers. You walked anywhere near their fucking kids, they would leap at your ass. But it was a 5-acre island that was sanctified as a monastic zone, one of the best libraries in the world. So we'd walk around these things with our iron buckets. They hit that bucket, they'd dent it. Also, they would climb big mahogany trees and shake branches of the birds that would fly down from the Himalayas to lay their eggs and babies twice a year. And they would see 4, 5, 6 of them jumping up to eat these baby chicks falling down all the time. It was crazy to watch this. And then these big 200-pounders that were old, sort of semi-old and possibly a little bit invalid, the army ants. Ever been around army ants? Army ants are wicked, man. They go right into the orifice of a big animal and eat it from the inside out. 2 days later, the fucking lizard, who's the alpha fucking lizard, is nothing but white bones. And you go like, that could easily be me. If I stopped, you're like this all the time. If you ever need to stop outside, you got to wipe off these fucking dengue, malaria, mosquitoes all the time. Like this constantly, as you fucking dug a hole to shit in the fucking soil. Every 3 days you got to move it around because it stinks and there's fucking maggots in it, and you eat a fucking mango that drops, it's got worms in it. There's no medicine for your worms coming out of your butt. Some of them are like 10 feet long tapeworms, and you go like, whoa, I'm a disgusting organism embedded in this fucking God consciousness. Get me out of here. And it goes on and on and on and on. The worst were the fucking flying ants. You're just walking meditatively up and down the path and some big fucking thing you can't even see, a fucking dingbat red ant, goes right to your fucking leg or your cheek, and you got like a baseball-sized welt on the side of your face. You go, you motherfucking ant. You think you've got loving kindness in your heart? It works because you're in a villa. You think Ubud's bad? Go to fucking Lanka and live like a nun. This is really an amazing fucking place besides the dingbats at Akasha. If anyone goes to a static dance and contact dance, keep them there. If they say they're poly, just say, hey, love it, I'm not one. But I'll tell you, this is not a bad place when you compare it to the other holes in the world. Calcutta, I lived for 6 months there, primarily on the street as a monk, off and on. Holy motherfucker. To see the deformities there in the way of life on the streets in Calcutta, away from the city center, I would sometimes just look, and because I was a renunciate, look at people that were so deformed purposely by birth and carved into these pretzel-like humans to try to evoke compassion from pedestrians, packed into that little square for their whole life, because right there was another family. And you go like, wow. And my teachers would say, Alan, wherever you go in the world, imagine that could be you. Because the number one driving force in these paramis is compassion. And I go like, and I would sometimes just sit there and just feel these people looking at me dead in the eyes. I remember one couple that came from Marin County. Those of you in America know Marin to be the ultimate cliche. It's where the whitest of white elite and all kinds of other colors and ethnicities who have money, mindfulness, and psychotherapy and plant medicine. No offense to the Marinites, I lived there for years. It's a bankrupt fucking culture, sorry. You know, I'm so tired of the upper middle class angst. My BMW doesn't really fire as well as it used to, all that kind of shit, you know. But I was in Calcutta, and two people I had known years back before I renounced the West, they went, oh my God, it's Alan, look at it, blah, 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 blah. They had all the mala beads, they had the perfunctory om, they must have been from, you know, one of the great gurus, I don't want to name the name of them. And they're asking, how is it? What are you doing here? It's so great to see you. And then over, cut to the chase. And in Hindi, which I knew at the time a little bit, these people, they knew I was a renunciate, had nothing. You have everything, I have nothing, a few paisa please. It's like the natural mantra of begging. Everything, I have nothing, a few pennies please. Now, those of you who've been to India, sometimes you meet those people who are oblivious to the other, right? Others who are annoyed by the other. And a lot of newcomers to the Asian world sometimes can easily be annoyed to the beggar because they're very persistent. They get in, not in your face, but they know how to get into your psyche because they need food, they want money. And I hear that the ones that are actually begging like that are actually the better ones off than the ones who can't even move. And so my friends, who I only knew briefly, were basically, you know, sort of the sense emotionally of not being bothered. And then they started to get into a little bit of a tiff between each other. And they went through a whole rhetoric of like, you always just judge me. It must have been rooted in your mother's relationship to you kind of thing. And the poor beggar is saying, you have everything, I have nothing, a few pennies, please. And they're going on and on about different psychological strategies of judging each other about their inadequacies, while this beggar is saying, you have everything, I have nothing. Please, just a few paisa, please. And at the end of this 10-minute little ritual, they said, please leave us alone. And they were, because they wanted to be in fight together. That's so much sometimes of the context that I'm unaware of in life. How easy it is to judge and how hard it is to feel. What am I not hearing in my context? What am I not hearing in someone else's arrogance? What am I not hearing in someone, you have everything, I have nothing. I have everything. I have all the women I want in the world. You have nothing. You're just another one of them. What's missing in my psyche? And I think that's not to personalize it, but I think we cannot escape the beauty of compassion and the virtue of adventure and the solidarity to Dharma. And to try to be mindfully aware of some things that we're just not aware of hearing. Those of you who come to Burma, you'll hear me say this often. In our travels, in our movement, we really have to hear carefully, you have everything, I have nothing. Please be present with me. You won't necessarily see that many beggars particularly, although there are places where they're highly impoverished, but the industry or the world of begging isn't so popular there. But context. So questions that you might have or things, other things, please take your time. Topics you want, Josh?
So like, two things, so I'll just ask you which way you want to go with it. One is more of a question.
Question.
The other one is kind of wanting to hear other people's... Okay.
Just a question. Let me handle the group. You handle the question.
Okay, cool. What was it? You spoke earlier, coming from your background with dealing with tyrannies, essentially, right? My words are not coming to me today. But dealing with these systems of oppression, right? And I think you mentioned earlier the freedom to be able to speak and to say and to be able to talk. Right now, where I have found myself coming into a lot of conflict with different organizations that I work with and different groups of people, is actually wanting to cut back on some of the freedom in certain platforms to be able to say certain things, because it allows for the promotion of propaganda in these platforms. So, like for instance, there was a huge Facebook platform I was part of, have been helping to run, and they were giving free time to a Nazi platform to just be able to like spew whatever they wanted there. And I was like, you can't fucking do this, right? But it was like, well, if you take away that, then where were the tyranny? So having been in these countries where you have these experiences arising, how would you deal with the concept of like, or suggestions you have for the concept of freedom of speech, but also cultivating groups and communities so you don't allow these other ideas in, or how would you do it?
I would just probably read the whole thread in the Facebook group and see what they say.
Okay.
I just don't frequent things that I don't want to read.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not so politically oriented anymore. So I'm not a very good source for that kind of dialogue. I'm more wanting to safeguard not just my own freedom of speech, but to know that my speech is actually free and uncontrived, and try to educate my heart to be more authentic with the things that I want to say that are free, with the person right in front of me. I'm really the one person at a time forum. But the advocacy of social systems and greater liberties in society, it's not my understanding. I'm more in the world today that the world is coming to an end as we know it. I have no real interest in that world. I'm retrieving myself from all of those things, and I'm decoupling myself as much as possible from civilization, capitalism, and urban life. I'm going to close down those things more and more as I find a home, and possibly even flirt with going back off-grid again. I'm thinking about an intentional, very elegantly neighbored community, either in Australia or here or in Hawaii, where I've lived, where I want to go back to the most basic things personally, not to preach, not just to share, where I am able to touch the earth again in these final days of my life. I want to be near those very rare people that I really do consider love. I would like to have a place for my daughter, and I would very much like to be in a relationship with someone I really adore and have a family of people that she has in her life come and stay and visit. I'd like to have my friends, I have friends from all over the world, to have a refuge to come. I have a theatrical, artistic, small room that I want to create to do my world of spoken word. I want to plant flowers. My father was a botanist. He was the head of the bonsai club of the state of our Virginia. I like plants. I like the earth. I like taking my shoes off. I like walking around naked. I don't like clothes all that much. I like ocean water that's clear. I want to feel and cry and do a few creative things with a few people near and dear to me. But I leave others who still have that vocation to do it. I do know a little bit about freedom of speech under high duress, like in countries like Burma. And I stand on the energy of being the embodiment of the freedom that you seek in any forum by being more in truth in oneself. And so I've studied the mind of those revolutionaries who've risked so much of what it means to confront the injustices of the world and the dampening of civil liberties and freedoms of speech and thought and conscience and assembly, and how they've gone about that. And so my last contribution to the question is I have this 4 book set, I think I may have mentioned to you, 4 books coming out in February called Burma's Voices of Freedom, in which that particular question in great dimension is explored in our dialogues. You could read those 1,500-page book about that. It is certainly something to protect. But the fine line between psychological, emotional violence and physical violence and the advocacy of violence and domination, very interesting, very unusual fine edge of where democracy is colluding or fascism is colluding, and how the human heart is colluding or freeing from totalitarian principles and democratic principles. This is where it comes back more and more to the way to answer these questions in their finer print is to meditate. So, are you coming to Burma?
Yeah.
Good. So that's a great, great context for a mind like yours. It's lucid, smart, informed, to be in dialogue with people there and to feel in that context the living, breathing, courageous struggle what Heidi brought up, the bravery to speak your truth. I'll introduce you to a few people there that are very breathtaking. Yo, yo, yo. Madam.
So speaking back to energy, as far as I'm concerned, like the universe is created by energy, and I do believe the law of attraction.
Take your time, please.
Yeah, and I do believe the law of attraction. But like, how do you feel the exact energy? So like, how do you feel the exact energy that's surrounded by you, and how do you differentiate the toxic energy?
How do I keep away toxic energy?
Yeah, and how do you feel the exact energy of your surroundings?
How do I feel it?
Yeah,
How do I feel toxicity?
yeah, exactly.
How do I know something's toxic? That's an interesting question.
Yeah,
I've been fooled by that, by the way. Have you?
yeah.
I want to make love sometimes with toxicity. You ever done that? Not really?
No, not really.
So why is the question interesting to you, if I can ask?
Because like from my past experience, I feel it's a bit dodgy to like, you know, when you first know people and then they can be really, really kind and nice. But then when you get to know them better, it's like, yeah, they can be fucking assholes, right? So, yeah, and like, I feel like the energy, like this topic in general is such a, yeah, it's such a like a deep, yeah, unbelievable deep. So it's like, I'm trying to really, yeah.
I'll keep it simple. What you're speaking to is a colossal earthly problem. What we see and what we feel is often not what we end up with. And for me, it's like I can draw it to, I'm into preventative medicine, preventative food, preventative behaviors, restorative yoga, restorative meditation, enhancing of vitality, resilience practices. I'm into being the healthiest I can be to keep at bay pathogens and toxicity and, things that if I'm malnourished or if I'm not as connected to my vitality, my health, my rest, my love, my friendships, my hygiene, I'm more prone. So I think the best way to both know healthy and unhealthy people is to increase our own sensitivity to what health means in ourselves. Stamina, vitality, resilience, discernment is a big one. Like, that food looks really good. I know it's absolutely says it's organic, but when I look more into the fine print of that, it's actually GMO. And so looking more deeply into something, not trusting the labels, just because a man or a woman has the artifice of a spiritual, psychological, so-called kindness, doesn't mean that they're genuinely coming from a deeper rootedness in that. It may be that they're still sincere, but they just don't have access to a deeper root of it. So I would want to be more rooted in myself, to be more resilient. That's all. I keep it simple. How to be healthy and hope for the best.
I've been looking for a. Sorry, is it okay to ask a question? I've been looking for a segue into just resilience, and maybe you answered most of that in that answer. But for both for myself, I feel like I have to do with more resilience, and also for children and your nephews and nieces, given the future that you've talked about.
So you're asking a question about resilience?
Building resilience in yourself and facilitating it in others.
Resilience for self
Yeah.
and resilience for others.
For others.
Particularly children.
Helping others find resilience.
Helping others find resilience. Well, I mean, look at Samantha's behavior here, look at Terry and Ian who own this villa. They're offering shelter, refuge. And that's helping others.
I probably mean more psychological resilience than physical, although I appreciate that they're not
Well, that's,
interrelated.
yeah, that's super psychological to be generous.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to include you in the Margaret problem soon. Put your money where your mouth is. Show up with $50 a month, I'll answer the question. Otherwise, no go.
How do you grow it in children?
What's
How
that?
do you grow that in children?
I'm not going to deviate from the money. I'd keep it so simple. Offer things that are in your means to give to people, and therein lies resilience. What do you have in your life as a resource? Where are you abundant? And how can I learn to extend that abundance to others is the first stage of being radiant and resilient. I mean, really, really down to very, very beautiful, basic groundedness. So I wouldn't negate Dharma as the basis of resilience. Resilience is just another way of talking about security, safety. I think that's one answer I want to really leave with all of us. Are you generous? How could I be more generous? Doesn't seem to register in you at all. It seems like you just went blank completely. I hate to say something very personal. How does it resonate with you, what I'm saying? Doesn't seem like you're communicating, this is not what I want to hear. That's what I'm hearing. Is that true or not true?
No, I'm very open to. I'm very, very, very receptive to anything you're saying and taking.
What the emotion is that you feel?
Probably just is that all? I was hoping for maybe a wider spectrum.
Hoping for more.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, we're communicating. Yeah, not quite exactly what you wanted to hear.
Well,
Hoping for more sort of is one of those states. I'll accept it, Alan, but it's not quite what I wanted.
No, it's totally in itself it stands alone and is very useful. But I suppose I am.
Okay, I'll go on.
I'm thinking of Heidi's question was around extending it to others, and you've mentioned resilience a number of times. So that's a word that kind of relate to. I don't know if I
Okay, I'll keep going. I'll keep going. Didn't work on the first one. I'll try again. I'll try again. Second area of resilience for me is turning people on to my friends. That's a huge area of caring that provides safety and happiness and security and nurturing for people. I mean, if I saw someone in need and I offered them this shelter, I would think that they would normally express great gratitude and feel that the idea of needing to be resilient now is temporarily assuaged, and they feel more at ease, and they may even be more vulnerable to cry at the deeper struggle. And all of a sudden friends come over, I'd like you to meet Heidi. And those friends are more curious about her life and her experiences, and now the fabric of safety and happiness is more intact. And I would say that she's feeling more resilient to the life that she had outside of the safety of the villa in this new form of friendship. If she did not want to come in or meet my friends, and she simply wanted to stay outside the loop, I want you to help me understand resilience, because the life that I'm living, I'm going to keep living it. I'll come over some other time. The psychological element of it. I go right back to my basic practices in a day of my integrity is the most resilient thing that I have. You can take my health from me, you can take my money from me, you could take probably my dearest tribe from me, and with my integrity, my self-honesty, my commitment to truth, my dedication to non-harmful thoughts and actions, my desire to be more generous, my integrity, to be more accountable of my thoughts and speech and my impact on others, to be more open and forgiving. My integrity would be a great source when I'm in despair to remind myself, Alan, you've done your very best to be truthful. To me, that would be a very great place to reflect upon for resilience to face whatever storm that created doubt in my life, or hurt, or loss, or fear. My friend Utinu, who suffered 17 years in isolation, how did you develop the most resilient place of your heart? In the darkest times in prison, I reflected on moments of love with my wife. He went there to survive insanity. So how well do you love, Alan? You know, how well did I communicate with someone whom I really believe in as deep and intimate in my life? Each phone call, each interaction, maybe the memory he's saying to me that you need to call upon in your moment of despair, drowning or flying or dealing with the precipice of extinction, where you find the resilience to face the complexity of that which you perceive as complex. So how well do I love is huge. Another one that I feel very comfortable with is how well did I live as a source of strength and satisfaction. It's like after eating a good meal, I'm not really looking to stay at the table to keep eating. And not many people can say that about a good week, a good month, a good year, or a good life. And so I ask you, are you really eating the life that you want so that you can stand in momentary emotional degrees of satisfaction where you know you've put your riskiest, bravest face on the process of being, and you go, there's more to do, but thank you for the meal, Alan. Thank you for being courageous, taking risks to actualize that which informs the most important thing to do and say. How out loud do you live on the terms of your integrity, your creative choice? Lots of people lose resilience if you're in compromised relationships, which are natural. But if you've really given it your best, like I was encouraging Nina yesterday in her circumstance, to make sure, as much as humanly possible, that she feels motivated to give it everything imaginable, to go the extra 2 or 3 miles in the marriage, in the family, to put forth the greater sense of patience and love and resilience, to do whatever is required so that whatever happens, she will know without a doubt, I did my absolute best. I would keep that as a very vital, available source of resilience in myself. Am I living the life today that I really want to live? Am I living the conversations that I want to be having? Am I being touched? Am I touching life in the way that I want to be touched and touch? Am I eating the mango that I eat as I want to eat it? Or am I moaning or struggling? Which is all natural, but I don't want to be natural. I want to be resilient. So being vigilant to high expression, creative speech, thought, and action. Uparle was willing to stand in front of 400 people knowing what he was going to do for an hour was well worth it to suffer 7 years of hard labor and be resilient during that period. He used his voice. That kind of thing. A very simple thing for a lot of men, I don't know, maybe women too, prior to my more connected, embodied meditation, yoga life, the way in which I simply stand, move, bend, rest, recline, is a source of resilience because I'm embodied. And if I'm in a slouch or a slump or a lean or an unconscious body posture for more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, God forbid a week or a month, I'm not present in my body. So I think one of the greatest, most accessible sources of resilience, psychological, emotional resilience, is to live in a more embodied way that reflects stature. Stature inherently communicates resilience. Resilience, to me, on some level, you could add your own. What does resilience mean? A combination of determination to be a dignified, empowered individual dedicated to the vocation of the Dharma. Let my posture reflect that dedication is a source of unending determination, patience, and resilience. Let me develop the 5, 10 qualities of the parami. Those things are the fabric of resilience. Self-compassion is a synonym for resilience. Although no matter how hard I try, I still will suffer. There's no escape from suffering ultimately, at least theoretically they say there is, but be prepared to be poignantly crucified on your denial of and that too, and that too, and that too. The young man who rubbed his stranger friend in Poland on the train to Auschwitz, he cultivated in caring for others self-resilience. So the story, I feel it, they survived, everyone in the cart died. So perhaps at the root of all this is the courage, what Aung San Suu Kyi says, the courage to care for things larger than your own self-interest could very well be the greatest resilience of all. Coming right back to the original, which is, I have a villa, you've been invited here freely, you're provided with a dialogue, a good company of beautiful men and women. There's a certain degree of being able to ask the quality of resilience. You're living in a safety zone. How do we pass on these gifts in our lives? How do we care for others as family? Is a huge, 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 for me, source of resilience. That's why I like being a dad. It wasn't a choice, but it came, and I'm so gifted, despite the complexity of it, because it's really excavated even a whole other dimension of Allenness out of himself, to the point where I didn't know that I really, really, really loved children like that. I mean, in a way that I see her as daughter, but equally I see children as the children of life. She's helped me understand someone larger than herself. So looking upon Susan and Margaret and Jennifer and Heidi and Martin, everyone in this room here as your children, offers you the accessibility of caring for them as father. So I ask you the question to leave for yourself if you want, what would I like to do to practice the gift of providing resilience for others as a source of self-resilience? And I take these words not to you, but to me. So thank you for the gift of the question. And thank you for your humility to allow me to probe and be personal with you. I didn't ask permission. I'm sorry about that. And I'm very happy that you're coming to Burma. You're coming, right? You're still on the fence? Don't hurry. Yeah, there's a space for you. And I'll put you right up close to my room, which is the best rooms in the monastery. I'll have you at my table where we eat, which is always the good food. Really good food. It'll be honorable to be silent and meditate together and get to know each other as men. So I hope you can come. If there's questions, yeah, no hurry. Just know that you've got a space. I like you. Which means that there's some people I don't like. No one here, but I will be honest about it. There are people, right, Heidi? There's some people you don't like, right? Don't admit it.
Not many.
Not many, no.
I'm very accepting.
Martin?
Yeah, can you explain the concept of soul as you understand it and how it relates to consciousness?
Soul.
Yeah.
S-O-U-L, soul. I use it more from my habit, the lexicon of my Christian roots, but in my direct experience through meditation, life, philosophical direct experience, the conscious use of the outer world brought into the inner body, and the illumination of consciousness based upon that has informed me I don't see centrality. And centrality or unchanging subjectivity, a permanent essence, soul, I don't see the evidence of that in my direct experience. We're in nature right now, I can't find the center point of that. My inclination would be go to the center of the earth, but that would just be a variable within the broader denial of a centerless ecosystem within a universe. So it's just hard to pinpoint in my direct experience through those different modalities anything that I would call unchanging, soul, ephemeral essence, centrality, matrix, all those compelling words, but I don't find the evidence of them in my direct experience any more than you can point to that's nature and this isn't. Consciousness is this ever-changing, seemingly infinite circuitry of diverse spectrums without central controller. So soul as a small synonym for God, creator, origins of it all, I don't see it. And the last point I would make with you, just on a pedagogic, existential Buddhist study level, the Buddha was known in this classical text for differentiating the teachings of Dhamma from classical Indian Dharma. Was the one distinction that he refuted soul, centrality, creator, and God. That there was no one behind it all or through it all that you could say, this is where it came from. This is why it continues. He talked about the continuum without controller. Deeds are done without doer. Suffering exists because of conditions of suffering, but it appears through the illusion of self that it's happening to me, but me cannot be found. Do not believe anyone except your own direct experience, and investigate deeply into the process of assumptions and to see if they're true. So he invited in these dialogues, come and see for yourself, ehipasiko. Come and see for yourself what you find to be true for you in answering, can soul be found? So if you were to come to Burma, they would encourage you to look very carefully at the interrelated, interdependent nature of consciousness, observing consciousness for the purpose of discovering the nature, the functionality of consciousness. They'd put you into the intimate empiricist role to answer the question, which gives you the most, obviously, or me, the most important position to answer for ourselves any theoretical question, which I really like about the system of mindful intelligence. It's always bringing you back into direct experience. Don't believe anything because you hear it, kind of thing. So that's one answer. It's like a fire isn't a fire because the fire is the priority of the components of the fire. A fire exists based upon wood and air and fuel, and a fire exists as conditions. A human mind, a human being is like a fire, but when you look more intimately into the interdependent nature of the arising of beingness called the human experience, it's nothing more everything in conditioned phenomena. When you examine more intimately, when the human goes out, no one died any more than a fire died. It's a figure of speech. So that's the difference between classical existential Buddhism, Vedanta, Advaita, Hinduism, theologies, Christian, all these kind of God-oriented, source-based, soul-oriented divinity schools, mystical schools like that. Another point within it, which I find very fascinating, is that it really brings back, figuratively speaking, responsibility to the individual, because that's really where I want to live. I can be a faith-driven type at times, but I'm not so drunk anymore in faith-driven ones. So the employment of practical steps to understand for myself the nature of something. I can free myself from the delusions of illusions. I find very compelling that I can take full responsibility and determine my own fate, so to speak. I may not be able to change the outer context a lot of the time. I'm born as you are as human. We're going to face extinction if we live long enough. But I can face how I relate to it. And that to me is very beautiful as a response to faith or soul or God. I don't need to pray necessarily for the Maker. I need to simply employ transformational qualities of consciousness and be more connected to the courage to care about my own awakening, figuratively speaking. So that really spoke to me on a logical level and on an experiential level, more and more empowered to determine my own feeling relationship to life. So
So the add-on to that, the question that arises is then, what is the composition of the I in your understanding?
what is the composition of the I? I like I. What is the reality of that composition?
Yeah.
I think it's for me, Martin, it's, what's the composition of the I? It's a figure of speech that's comfortably used by most because of the convenience and the imperative, if you will, of looking closely at the phenomena of life. It's hard to say that where aren't you, much less that you aren't. Like, where isn't there I and other? The duality of this fiction of you there, me here, seems so real, in other words. So it's natural that we would develop a language and a relationship world based upon I and other and the transaction of that and other. It's hard to say that your skin and my skin, separated by you over there and me over here, isn't real. I made the crime, you didn't do it, I'm going to jail, you're going to bail me out. I and other. But in reality, these I and others are the fictions of convenient concepts overlaid onto changing conditions that when you look more intimately, as I've experienced in my relative way, changing conditions without centrality, you can't find the I. So it's used conventionally as a necessity, if you will. You can't be saying non-Martin, non-Allen concepts to each other. It's like, hey, my phenomena is speaking to your phenomena. Phenomena is connecting with phenomena, and how is your phenomena today? It's hard to get out of the vocabulary of I, you, I, we, other. But I think when we see more empirically through the various things I mentioned, whether it be examining ecosystems where there is no centrality to nature, a universe without boundary, the idea of north and south, east and west are fictions. In infinity there is no up and down. I mean, we don't know that we're up and down. The gravity basically keeps us up, but it's a figurative speech, right? It's very much like the convenience of I and other. We're using relative concepts to address fundamentally existential universal conditions. To know that distinction allows a liberty within the use of the convention. That's all. That's how I would look at it. But the greater issue, I would think, is that you're interested that way. From my experience of that, which is a very fascinating thing my whole life, continues to be, is to employ the empiricism of looking into both the literature. I'll give you a couple of books by name, and those of you who are interested. The Questions of King Milinda. They're two classical Buddhist texts where an ancient king is said to have asked Anuruddha, a so-called enlightened monk, on the most salient questions one could ask about the nature of life, consciousness, and being. And there are numerous chapters dedicated to the dialogue that you and I are having right now about, please explain to me, Anuruddha, these salient questions I have about I, about other, about soul, about source, about God versus Dhamma. And that distinction is illuminated in these dialogues in quite a brilliant way. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 1 and Book 2. You can get them online. They're original Buddhist texts, part of the 11,000 pages. Very obscure texts, but they're the ones that many of the ones, nuns and monks who are trained in debate, have to memorize the sequence of how to illuminate, elucidate, and debate the concept of self and non-self. So self, just, the word I and self in classical Buddhist literature is called atta, A-T-T-A, and what distinguished Buddhist psychological teachings from Advaita in India was anatta, the absence of self. Many people consider it the most fascinating analytical differentiating concept within any system of thought ever thought of on the planet, is the concept of anatta. Like the whole concept we talked about it in Mass of the blockchain and a decentralized system of interrelated components without centrality. And so the Dhamma is thought of as this decentralized, leaderless, interlocking system of conditions that function to give life to these smart contracts called Martin, Allen, Earth, planet, dimensions of existence with configurations of suffering and freedom. It's quite the theater. Why this phenomenology of existential comedy, terror, and satire exists, those are the only filters that I can see that illuminate some of the more salient features is comedy, satire, surrealism, and theater. If you come to Burma, it's a culture that thrived in comedy, satire, surrealism, and theater. They're the ones who saw suffering up close, and the only way to really, truly win the battle of terror was to satirize it. It was the most trustworthy emotion of resilience, satire. I refuse to participate in your fucking evil. You're the loser, not me. That kind of thing. And of course, existential comedy, and it's a culture of that. And of course, say no more about Big Brother and George Orwell having lived there for 3 years. And so it's really quite the theater of the absurd there. And you see the machinations of genius and totalitarianism, feminism and toxic patriarchy, wealth and poverty, all the invigorating expressions of the Czech theaters of the absurd and the theatrical expressions that we've seen that are so demonstrative, so intellectual, so perverse, exotic, erotic. They're unafraid of these expressions, these convulsions. So the safeguard against too much atta-driven centrality is self-mockery. Mindfulness is one thing, but the Burmese are very comfortable with self-mockery and mockery of others. They like fucking with your ego. Heidi would be perfect for you there. They really will just help you understand ways to ruin the life of another person through humor. Humor.
I don't want to ruin other people.
Ruin them into happiness. Okay, I don't know what time it is, but what time is it? Let's take a break. What time?
So 11:15. 11:15.
So let's take about a 15-minute break, and we'll come back for that last 30 minutes and sit before lunch. Thank you.